I love Chris Matthews. I really do. We've had him on the show. It's been years since we had him on the show, and I asked him, what the hell are you always reading when you're on doing this hardball show? I see you reading stuff off camera. What the hell are you doing, man? It's bugging me out. He said that people were showing him notes. Well, he's back on the show. Chris Matthews, good morning, Chris. How are you, my man?
Rover, what are you talking about? I'm trying to figure this out. I'm reading. I have notes on the table in front of me. I've got the prompter up there for some of the stuff. There's really nobody in the room. There's one guy, Durbin, who's my floor director. We sort of kid around and fist bump and everything, but there's really no other person visually to me when I'm on the air.
You should watch the show sometime. Watch yourself back, and you are looking off camera oftentimes. I'm thinking, I go, what the hell is this guy looking at over?
To the right.
I think so.
I think I might be looking at myself in the monitor.
Well, Chris is a narcissist, and he likes to look at himself.
But at least I don't have a guy like Gelman. Regis Philbin's always talking to. Remember that? He's always talking to somebody named Gelman, whoever that is.
Yeah. Who does that?
Regis.
Right.
Gelman.
Yeah. So Chris Matthews has a book out, Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero. This guy, Jack Kennedy, you loved him. I mean, if they dug Kennedy up, Chris Matthews would mount him. I'm telling you, I know it. He loves him. Why? So tell me about the book. There have been numerous books written on him. And what makes yours different?
Well, I got past all the Camelot stuff, which was made up after he was dead. Jackie came up with that in that interview afterwards with Teddy White. There never was a Camelot at the time of Kennedy. He was the new frontier in black and white. It wasn't color TV. It was a black and white era, and he was a tough Irish pal, and he was tough, and he had his enemies, and it was real. And what I wanted to do is go back and find the real person behind the pal. So I went back to the guys that really knew him, like Chuck Spaulding, his close friend, and Lem Billings, who had a room at the White House, and Ben Bradley, my friend, and Charlie Bartlett, and all these guys, Red Fay, and Tip O'Neill I worked for all those years. And I went to guys, and Billy Sutton was his first guy to work for him. And I wanted to find out what he was like in the room with you. The day you're with him, what was it like being with the guy? And how did he behave? And what did it feel like? And was it fun? And all that? And was he fun? And then I got to the girls, too, to some extent. Mainly the guys, though. I wanted to find out what kind of a guy he was. And I think that's what the book's about. Well,
he loved his women. That's what kind of guy he was, right?
Well, that's for sure. And he liked really beautiful women, too. And more Vogue than Playboy. The women, Angie Dickinson, people like that, Gene Tierney, the movie stars he went with, they were really exquisite-looking people. They weren't just sexy. They were really good-looking. And one of his old buddies said if he went out with Marilyn Monroe, it was the ugliest woman he ever went out with. Well, an absurd statement, of course.
Chris Matthews is on with us. Chris, I've been saying this after this last presidential election and just almost every election, but speaking of Kennedy, and, he was having affairs and all that kind of stuff, now we're so obsessed with this, and so many of these Republicans are obsessed with this, and then they end up banging their interns, having gay sex in bathroom stalls. They don't practice what they preach. But
the Minnesota case, stopping off at that. I went to some convention or something at one of the political stops, and I remember we all went in and take a look at that place. They said it's there in one of the men's rooms there.
You look just to witness it, almost like a crash scene or something.
It's still bizarre behavior beyond bizarre behavior, and in a public place like that, in the stalls, and you go, what is this, the drive of this?
That is crazy, but what is not crazy are people having affairs. I mean, this happens in so many marriages.
Right. It happens at the Knights of Columbus. It happens everywhere.
Do you think that
officers and generals, apparently?
Right, and with Petraeus and whatnot, do you think that we spend so much focus on this that anyone who could be a legitimate candidate for any sort of public office, whether it's city, county, state, federal level, that so many guys have done stuff like this, and everyone has skeletons in their closet. Do you think that we've gotten to a point in this country where we have really eliminated 99% of the people who would make great politicians because they look at it and they go, forget it, man, I don't want to do it.
You're onto something. I think, suppose you get put up for a really good appointment, head of the Peace Corps, head of anything, head of the space program, and you go, 10 years ago somebody complained about something I did at the office. Do I really want to go through that again?
Right.
Or I had a girirlfriend because I really fell for her, and I broke it off after a couple of weeks because I knew it would hurt my marriage, but I really liked her. I still really like her in memory. But I disciplined myself, and I got over it, and we broke up. And that's a matter of the heart. How can you hold that really against a person? I mean, it's wrong to do it, socially and morally, I guess. But, is the guy a bad guy because he fell for his secretary 10 years ago? And does he want to go through that again with his family? I mean, you're right. That's the stuff that drives people away, and everybody's a hypocrite about it. And they go, "Oh, he was a bad guy. Petraeus a bad guy." How do we know with Petraeus? Suppose he honestly fell for this person.
Sure,
he really loved her after 6 or 10 or 20 interviews with her. He just naturally, like you do, you fall for somebody. It's not like he was out checking out women or looking for women or find younger women for his wife was getting old. It wasn't some sort of thing like that. It was of the heart. I worked for Tip O'Neill all those years, and one time he said to me, I said, it's sad when people get divorced after 30 years or something like that. And he said to me, slow down. You never know what's in another man's heart.
True.
And boy, is that the great admonition we should all take to heart before we judge people.
You bring up, Chris Matthews is on with us, his book, Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero. You brought up that the whole Camelot myth that was after and that the reality was different. Now, I also hear in politics people say, there used to be a time, even just 5 or 10, 10 years ago, where we would work together to solve problems. And that isn't happening today. Is that true, or is this sort of revisionist
I'm working on the
history?
book right now. It's my next book, Tip and the Gipper, I was Tip's AA for 6 years, and it wasn't like the cartoon. Like neither one of these guys were the cartoons. I mean, Tip thought of Reagan as this good-looking guy who had kind of passed his screen test in Hollywood and became a movie star, and it was easy all his life, and it was not like that when you study Reagan's background. His wife dumped him rather brutally. He lost his career in the movies, had to fight to get back into television, then he lost that career. His life was pretty challenging for a guy who happened to be good-looking. And Tip was not this big, rotund, fat, big spender. He was a lot more complicated than that. He's really a reformer in many ways and very thoughtful when I work with him. And the cartoon was these are two Irish guys to go out drinking after work and solve all their problems over beers. I mean, give me a break. It doesn't work that way. But when you go back at the record, and this is what I liked about both these guys, they really knew they had a job to do. They respected the electorate. They knew who won the last election. They knew each other had real jobs that were really elected by the people, and they really wanted the system to work. So look at it. They solved Social Security for decades. They had the best tax reform bill ever. They worked on things like the Northern Irish thing, on Lebanon and things together, the whole build-up to dealing with Gorbachev. So many cases in which I can point out, I'm going to in this book, where they had really good output. They served the public's interest despite politics or with politics. So I really do think the bottom line was it did work. It really was quite a moment. And we don't have that today. We're watching this fiscal cliff, and we wonder, why are these guys so slow at this? Why can't they get to it? And we'll see in the next couple of days whether they can or not. Do
you think that networks like yours, MSNBC, and on the flip side, Fox News, that only contributes to some of this problem, that everything is so – if I watch Fox News, for instance, Obama is a complete idiot on everything. And you realize, you go, okay, you may disagree with the guy, and I disagree with a lot of conservatives, but I don't think that they're all idiots and that they can't. Everything they do is completely wrong. If you watch Sean Hannity, everything the president does is wrong. You go, well, I mean, that's pretty amazing. This guy got to be president and he's such an idiot. But is that part of the problem? That
Look, I think that's a great critique what you're making, and I hope people keep doing it against people like me. I think my show, I try to have Republicans on. I try to have the debate. Our best shows are debate shows. I accept that as a criticism. I do think that all this stuff you're talking about gets very close to just propaganda. And propaganda that just makes the person watching feel, oh, I'm great, I'm perfect, I got it all figured out. No, you don't. It isn't that simple. I just think, people ought to watch more than one show like Hannity. They ought to watch something else that disagrees with Hannity, but they won't. And yeah. I don't know what it is. I just was talking about this with somebody the other day. Liberals don't mind watching Fox, but conservatives will not watch liberals.
You're right. I love, and I disagree with everything on Fox. I watch it; it's entertaining, and they present the news or opinion in a very entertaining way. I will give them that.
Is a great broadcaster. He knows what he's doing. That show, there is great broadcast values in that operation, but they also, I think Hannity, for example, is not nuanced. I mean, Hannity actually operates, and I'm Catholic too, but Like you can outlaw abortion just like that, just outlaw it, and it will be outlawed. I don't know what that means. I mean, there's too much freedom in this country to outlaw things like that. I mean, it's just people go across to Canada, they'll do something. I mean, it's stupid to talk like that, and yet they do it. But I agree. Look, I think some of my shows around me, and my show occasionally does venture into that where it's just one side, and I agree completely. I think if you watch my show, though, you're going to hear both sides. You're not going to hear constant making fun of. You'll never hear me make fun of Boehner. I mean, I think we're very respectful of Boehner's situation.
Well,
we may go after Cantor a little tougher. We may go after Rush and Nordquist. But I think we're respectful of politicians. But we're not going to sit around and act like Michelle Bachmann is sane or Alan West or these people. I think they say things that are just really nutty. When she went out and said, we have to have the House of Representatives investigated for anti-American activities. And you got Alan West saying there's 81 communists in the U.S. House and they're all Democrats. I mean, there's no two sides to those arguments. There's one side. These people are wrong.
I agree with you. Chris, his book is Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero. Chris Matthews has Hardball, which airs weeknights at 7 p.m. on MSNBC. Chris, always good having you on. We've got to get you back on again soon.
Thanks. Please have me back.
Thank you, Chris. Chris Matthews.